Welcome to Familiar Territory, an anime podcast hosted by two white dudes who've been friends for over 15 years. Here we talk about the history and influence of anime, as well as review anime new and old. So grab your talking cap and transform into some comfy clothes as we step into a familiar territory. My name is Grant.
And I'm Brantley. Heads up, spoilers on the way. Check the description, see if you're safe to listen.
It's been a while since we've had a show like Magical Girl Destroyers, or Magical Destroyers. Mahou Shoujo Magical Destroyers. Mahou Shoujo Magical Destroyers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, sure has been a while.
Your energy, your energy is fucking lacking.
I'm giving you elbow room.
This is the anime of the fucking year, and you are not interested at all.
Well, whose problem is that?
So I think the last time that we had a show that was like Magical Destroyers was probably when we reviewed Earth Maiden Arjuna.
Oh. Yeah, but Earth Maiden Arjuna made a splash. I think Magical Destroyers went out with a whimper.
I don't know. I think if you don't like it, you can go rewatch the show and see that this show's about liking things.
Yeah, well, here's a fun quote from Jun Inagawa, he's the original creator of the Magical Destroyers concept and in some part helped direct the anime. This is an interview between Jun Inagawa and Ryo Tajima, and this is being featured on Tokion. I really like this quote from Jun, talking about how he kind of built up this concept of what would become the Magical Destroyers. He said, "I decided to draw magical girls with their bad side out in the open. It's not like I have a message I want to convey through these characters. Nothing deep. I've always enjoyed watching anime with girl protagonists and drawing girls, so it's just an extension of that."
Yeah.
Yeah. And so here we are with an incredible sort of conflicted feeling where it does and doesn't feel like Jun is being honest here. Of course, when I say Jun Inagawa, I'm not talking just, to Jun. I'm talking to the staff who worked on this, in total, Biberi Animation Studios. I know they're, out to prove themselves, and, I don't care to, dice up, whose fault is it that I didn't like this piece of media, whatever. They're not going to listen to this review. This, in a way, almost isn't for them. But this show does indeed, it's modern art, under the definition that it makes me feel things, and most of those things are negative. You know what, a little pretense to this. I feel like this is the kind of show that, if it's one of your early, anime experiences, I think it could have a pretty severe impact on you, right?
If you watch it, you might think that it's good,
right? And I mean that earnestly, in the sense that you'll feel seen by this show, right? That it's oh, I'm someone who's new to anime. This still feels like it's maybe culturally out of bounds for me, but here's a show about a bunch of people who are made to be, out of bounds and are oppressed for liking what they like, and we're gonna, have this story be about them pushing back. I get it. If, you have sort of a surface or a short range of experience with anime, I feel like there's that vulnerability stage that you're still in. However, I think for Grant and I, with the amount of time we spent with the medium and being a bunch of leftists, and
the answer is too much.
This comes off as such even if it's not supposed to have a message, even if it is supposed to have a message, I don't get the impression that it's giving the message it means to. When it professes its whole take on you should like what you like, it feels very reactionary and kind of extremely misaligned. I hope that with this review, if anyone's watching and really, really dug this show, that's cool. Just, I do hope that our critical take on this maybe is, it's to some extent informative or insightful about, like, what we feel like oppression is in our real world and how this kind of mischaracterizes it. But yeah, loaded thoughts aside, oof, this was a weird one to get
I
through.
would say it was a bad one. I don't think that this show was ever good. A couple of some people I talked to about this show, when I talk about the show, I've always been saying, like, I don't know how I feel about it until it ends, because it felt like it was trying to build up to say something, and it was going to be this either like scathing criticism of otaku culture or a exploration of otaku culture, but it really just wasn't that. It wasn't either of them.
Yeah, it I guess in some ways it felt to us like, okay, we're seeing sort of the infancy stages of, like, that knee-jerk style of feeling oppressed, where it's like, yeah, and by the way, I know the show plot is literally about, like, policing and stuff, like, we get that, but, like, stepping back to, like, the writer's room, the whole concept being like, yeah, we're just consumers of anime and manga, and they don't like that, and that's unfair. It's like, where does that come from? In a world where these things are only more and more mainstream, it really feels short-sighted. And I think that's where a lot of our criticisms are going to come from, is that when the show presents these things as profound, Grant and I are like, wait, no, that's step one, right? Step one is feeling alienated. Step, 2, 3, 6, 7, all up to like 30,000 is, the digging deeper part, the understanding, like, the systemic sort of groundings of oppression, and how what you're feeling wasn't that, it was something else, which is just kind of this minor interpersonal discomfort.
Yes.
And so the fact that the show plot takes step one and exacerbates it into a war feels senseless, Fiction is fiction. You can make a story about whatever you want. But for us, this feels like kiddie pool anarchy.
Yeah, it doesn't even really say anything political. That's the thing. This show likes the political, like, aesthetic of anarchy, but, like, it's not about it. It's about anime. It's about anime and being secluded from the society because of how much you like anime. Let's talk about the premise of the show a little bit before we continue to complain about it.
Alrighty, let's go for it.
Magical Girl Destroyers takes place in the year of our Lord 2011. Skyrim is not out yet, and so video games have not reached their peak medium.
Jesus Christ.
In 3 years before where the show starts, all the otakus have been captured and put into Akihabara because they suck, and the government wants them gone. Why, you may ask? That's a good question. Not really talked about. They're just looked at as worse people.
Best that can be presumed is, it's like a puritanical thing,
yeah,
degeneracy and whatever. But they don't even really talk that much about that. Like, I feel like the reasoning gets shelved quickly because it's just so thoroughly assumed that, like, oh yeah, this is supposed to happen this way, or this already happens, and now that logical next step is that they start caging people up. Which, again, for Grant and I, being in a world where this stuff is very mainstream, Like you've worked in schools and you know, like,
Yeah, kids love anime.
yeah, like
Every single child.
we know someone whose child knows about Chainsaw Man. He's like, what, 10 or under? Like,
Anime is no longer this niche interest that people have. It is mainstream, and it's okay that it's mainstream. But the thing is that this is pretending that the world stopped carrying, like, it wants you to believe that it's like 2008 and 2011, and so if you like anime, you're just a little weird, and people don't like you for that. But it doesn't have any objective reasoning in the world that it takes place in, so it just kind of feels odd. Right? We don't really know much about the government that they're fighting against, except for the fact that they don't like otakus. And you could be like, oh, it represents society's views on otakus. But at least in the Western term, it doesn't.
Yeah. Hi, this is Brantley from the editing room. For our younger listeners, a bit of context on anime as mainstream. My first memory of anime was Kiki's Delivery Service, airing on Disney Channel in America in the year 2000, when I was 6 years old.
And then even if we think about how otakus are portrayed and treated in Japan, it's not because they like things, it's for other reasons, and this show doesn't touch on that.
Yeah, I think it's worth mentioning, too, that in a world-building sense, I don't know if it's actually, like, government involvement in this at all, because really the only person we see commanding this is Shobon and his, underlings, like Slayer and stuff. It's not like you're gonna see, like a bunch of Diet members talking about this crisis or anything like that. You don't see people in suits aside from the guy with the TV on his head. That's it. Right. Again, it doesn't feel like it's taking place in the world. And for everybody who's actually seen this show and knows what happens at the end, yeah, but we're playing along, right?
Right.
Playing along with the show's premise, it feels weak.
So the show starts out with the otakus uprising to find their 3 magical girls so that they can fight against the government. The magical girls are named Blue, Pink, and Anarchy, and they go on these whimsical adventures to conquer the government, but they keep getting sidetracked by crazy things like cars and a pool party and collecting a figure to find out information. The thing about this show is that most episodes are following Otaku Hero and the 3 magical girls as they do something to further the involvement of otakus into the war while the actual war is happening. And the stuff they do is not always particularly interesting or really needed for the plot. So each episode is fairly episodic. For the most part, you can probably watch a episode and understand what you're watching without having any prior knowledge to it, because most of the episodes are what's happening. It happened. What's happening? It happened.
Yeah. To this point, there's a character that becomes prominent later, like one of the background characters, like the character that has sort of the horned helmet. Eventually sort of gets upgraded to a more prominent role as a background character. And not to say that my anime list is like the one like most up-to-date domain of everything, but right now that character's name is just Anime Otaku. That's it. Yeah. So like, and I couldn't tell you what that character's name is. So it really doesn't that's it. It really doesn't.
It doesn't. So the idea is that all these otaku have these obsessions, and you follow them around as the main character, Otaku Hero, tries to figure out how to kill Shoban. And if
that's a very funny way to say it. Sorry.
Yeah, and they're being
kill that guy.
And they're being followed by this goofy little mascot character named Kiyotaro, and he dies all the time. And it's weird because they want you to kind of understand the different obsessions or even just like hobbies of these otaku. Like you have an episode about the car enthusiasts, and it doesn't really talk about their hobby. It's just, hey, look at these cars and their cringe mobiles. They don't like that. Let's have an epic fight. Everyone dies. The next episode happens. Yeah. Then you get an episode about model building where Otaku Hero wants to find an old mecha model, and it comes, it's about how older otaku and young otaku are different, but it doesn't explain what it means to be an older otaku, or what changes have been made culturally in the years that are separated. Mm-hmm. And in this episode, you almost have a little bit of an understanding, because the old otaku guy is ignoring his family to pursue these hobbies, and you think, oh, maybe they're going to talk about how there is this kind of darker side of these hobbies in which people will neglect to do what they need to do in their life.
Yeah, problematizing it.
But it doesn't even talk about it.
Yeah. Much more time gets spent on antics that usually feel unrelated. And I think you make a good point, is that something that I think bugs us so much is how, like, shallow the, explorations of each of these are. I know, in that interview I mentioned before, Jun mentions, like, I see otaku as a lifestyle. To be an otaku is to care about something a lot. It's not just moe. It's not just liking anime and manga. But
which is interesting. There's something there.
And it's like, looking at, say, his Twitter and, who he's collaborated with, I want to believe that he's someone who's, like, involved in countercultural scenes and stuff. Like, I want to say that he's been around, people who are on the fringe of, societal norms. But when asked to sort of give an account of what they do, right? Like, it's mostly the surface level stuff of just, oh, they like this thing. Oh, they have the cringe mobile. It's not, we don't get to hear about, what did they have to, go through to get those decals? Do they have a buddy who got them set up with this? Or, does this at all, like, have to account for what model of car they buy? Is this something, did someone make their own decals? Like, the craft of it is totally alien to us if this is our only understanding of otaku culture from this show. Right. We get, like, hey, some of the, I feel like maybe the generational gap episode 4, maybe is where we get kind of close, where it's like, oh, it's people, talking about how things were different back then, and there's an implication there that, hey, we did things more on our own, more makeshift, that kind of thing, But that craft really gets lost fast. I know, like, Otaku Hero has this old Godin figure, that he really values. And, they talk a little bit about, like, the quality of it, how it's been upkept, and how it's, maybe seen a bit of wear and tear. But then, instead of having some kind of cool little sit-down where we get to see, this is how we know how to repair this kind of thing, or how, real collectors maintain their collection. Instead, they use magic to fix it. And it's like, oh, that would have been a really good opportunity to, like, get a little edutainment going, It feels like it wants to talk of otaku, but not, like, hear from otaku.
Right. It doesn't really talk about the culture of otaku. It just kind of paints them, says, hey, look at them, and then disappears. Like, there's the episode where they meet the American otaku, who is this big burly guy who's obsessed with anime, and they're trying to find a drug to make the magical girls powerful, which is pretty subversive for an anime. A lot of times anime don't talk about drug use, but this big American guy is it could be a way that we can talk about anime's influence on the West.
Mm-hmm.
But by the time that the show wants to delve onto it, he is pushed aside. He is not a character. They focus on the main characters again. They climb up a mountain, or this giant building that is like mountain-like, and it is shown that Marcus wasn't actually an otaku. He was just trying to get his daughter back from the SSC so that they can leave Japan. But we didn't even really get a time to care about Marcus, besides the fact that he was saying English words.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't really get to explore it. So it's nothing. It's another nothing episode.
Mm-hmm. I want to get across that, like, I think a lot of our disappointments here, stem from cases like this, where things are presented and dropped without thorough development. It's so seemingly artificial, that all you have to do to be an otaku is to like something is, a fair statement that has some, weight to it. There's a discussion waiting there, right? But I would think it would be fun if these people actually got to talk about this stuff. Take the here's a core part of the show is the military otaku. Like the people who go out into forests and get up in full military gear. They got modified like airsoft weapons and things like that, and they're using like research knowledge of real tactics and stuff to fight each other. Right, like that, like LARPing stuff. Like people really, really get into that. It's not difficult to understand that, like, especially from a Western perspective, right? I think it's one of the places where we have a very strong, like, Venn diagram overlap. But when you see military otaku depicted in this show, most of the time they're just in a firing line. They're just standing up and shooting at waves of, Shogun soldiers, just generically. It's so rare that you even get the impression that they practice tactics, like, again, like, oh, here's someone who has pirate radio set up. Cool. How did they set it up? What's their history with it? I don't know. They just have it. Maybe they didn't even set it up themselves. Like.
But enough about them. Let's go watch the magical girls do antics again.
Yeah, it's like if I came from one of these like underrepresented or misrepresented groups of otaku, I feel like I would have been. It wouldn't feel good to be so understated, right? Like. Right. For this show to be like, this is for you, and they point to the stands, right? It's just like, yeah, they're talking about us, and then they're gone, right? It's like, do you know anybody like me? Do you talk to anybody like me? The answer to that might be yes, but it just doesn't appear in the show. And again, I don't want to levy this as just a writing problem or just a production problem, right? It's probably something mixed in the middle, but
and one of the other issues is that once you do get to know a little bit more about the magical girl backgrounds, it's nothing, right? They're nothing. They were sent in a giant box to Otaku Hero, and they became friends with Otaku Hero, and then he makes them cosplay so they can be magical girls. And that gives them the power of magical girls. So their agency as characters isn't even there.
Yep.
They are just legitimate dolls that are being paid
they are
or
literal objects. It's hard to I keep bringing it back to that interview, but Jun mentions like, yeah, I love stuff with female protagonists, and this is what we get from that. It feels so
right.
juvenile, and like
Yes.
maybe that was the intention, but if it is, then this is just not for us. maybe it's because we got excited about, hey, there's a show being created and this guy is a self-proclaimed anarchist. I think that politically you and I got excited about that. And then the show premise came out and everything sank.
Yes.
But
and once again you have this idea like, oh, okay, so these characters are literal toys for the main character. Maybe there's going to be something there.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's nothing more. It doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And so you don't get this, like, I had this long running like thought that, oh, these are actual figures that the otaku hero holds close to him, or they are representative of something else, but they're not. And in the next episode after that, you get them teleported into a game where you have game rules and hacking, but it's weird because that's the plot of the show, is that they're not real. It's all a game, but there's a game within a game.
Yeah.
They did the same plot twist twice.
They really kind of blew it early.
Yes. And like the idea of that one is like this kid was so obsessed with trying to win that he was hacking and cheating, and then the only way for him to continue to hack and cheat because he kept getting banned was for an AI companion named Eve, and his name is Adam because subtlety is dead. They fight the magical girls, and then they go away. They're done. It's over. And so there's nothing to it. It's like, hacking is bad, kids. Don't hack or you'll become a government agent. But they don't go into depth about that. They don't explain it. It goes straight into goofy antics and poorly choreographed fight scenes.
Yeah. It is weird that they're like what you like, but don't be a hacker.
Yeah, and like, to be fair, true. If you're gonna play competitive games, don't hack.
Yeah, it does. It does interrupt other people's ability to have fun, but I just thought that was ironic.
It's just weird. It's just nonsense. And once again, once the episode's done, it's moving on to the next thing, which is they try and throw a convention, which is called Wanku. Or well, no, because it's supposed to be it's
probably
supposed to be
wank, right? But
yes,
pronounce for those who are listening, they pronounce it Wanku, but it's probably supposed to be making a joke about wanking. That's at least, yes. I don't know. We're gaijin. We're dumb Americans.
Yeah. But it's about a convention about telling people how much you like the things you like, which is good. It's a nice little message. Like the things you like.
It's probably about as close as this show gets to having like a rousing cry for something.
Right. And then it is immediately brought in with quite possibly the worst part of the show, where the disembodied head comes and they fight the disembodied head, who is a reincarnated older brother of a younger sister who loved her so much that he wanted to be killed by her. And she did it, but she didn't want to do it, and she didn't love her brother that much. And once again, you have this sort of path to talk about like the problematic elements of these weird relationships that anime likes to do. But it doesn't go anywhere because the little sister and the head are killed before the episode ends.
Yeah.
It's just odd. It's nothing. It's nothing. it doesn't talk about it being problematic. It doesn't explore the themes in any way that's interesting. It's just like, hey, this is an anime thing. Okay, next episode.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so the big plot battle starts, and it's just all the characters coming back to help Otaku Hero destroy the government. The magical girls take the drugs to make them more powerful, but it actually makes them evil.
They sort of like lose their memories that they've been developing all this time and revert to an antagonistic state, which doesn't exactly make sense because they weren't originally antagonistic. It's again, if you like internal logic and world building, then this show is not for you.
Which we say in a lot of shows.
Yeah, I don't know that they were caring about that, but again, if you do care about that, then get out of Dodge right away. You're gonna waste your time on this.
And so it ends with Otaku Hero getting killed by the magical girls. Because the entire show was basically scripted by Shoban, the TV head guy, to appease some sort of god named Origin, who was disguising herself as Kiyotaro, their little mascot person. And so Otaku Hero dies, everyone is sad, and then another Otaku Hero rises, and it starts off again.
Mm-hmm. And it's really great because the new Otaku Hero is a character that we knew from before, but we don't know the name off the top of our heads. So it's seriously so underdeveloped that the next in line, it might as well have been nobody.
Yes. It's bad.
Yeah.
And it's not bad because there's nothing there. It's bad because it doesn't... If you watch the opening, which I do have to give credit, is a phenomenal opening.
Mm-hmm.
The opening is this buck wild, like, non-stop shot of all these metaphorical symbolisms and wild animations. It goes into some glitchcore nonsense with the audio distorting into like gross sounds that somehow work. There's all these flashing images, all this stuff that you can see, and we watch the opening every single time we watch that show because it's cool
and it's potentially meaningful.
But none of the stuff that you can gain from this show is evident in the opening. So there's this theme of Otaku Hero running while the magical girls are in a car. He drinks a blue betta fish, puts it in his mouth, spits the blue betta fish out, and then punches Shoban in the face. And then he holds the magical girls together as they're in this water as he fights to get to them. And you think there's something here. There's got to be something here. There's something in this opening, and something in this show is going to make this make sense. And nothing becomes as thought-provoking as the opening. Nothing.
Yep. Even the ending, which is relatively low energy and doesn't have that much in terms of like unique visuals. Like it has like a couple good shots that they're panned over and stuff. Even that, like, it works on the like less is more kind of principle.
Yeah,
you know, like
because
you can fill in your gaps, you know, instead of just being told some things and whatnot, like, and then, you know, skidding along to the next plot point or next gag. Like, you get to soak in it. Like, I see the opening and the ending, and I feel like this is maybe what, you know, is closer to what, you know, the show creators would want out of this. But it really raises the question then of why the show is so flatly played out, you know?
Yeah. Well, and the ending also has all this symbolism. You see a bunch of corpses of all these girls, of all the magical girls, and they're tending to Otaku Hero, and you think, oh, maybe this is about women in anime having to cater to the men that they're supposed to be entertaining, and how they will just get killed off when the next new hotness comes off because they're all wearing like sailor uniforms or bathing suits, and it's like, oh, okay, so maybe this is symbolizing how anime goes from objectifying women one way to objectifying women another way. But it's not that. It's not. It's just cool looking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You honestly, I know this is going to sound hyperbolic, but I feel like if Magical Destroyers was just the opening and just the ending, then you could draw much more interesting conclusions about the story it's telling through visuals and through lyrics, which, by the way, credit where credit's due, Jun Inagawa did write the lyrics to the opening. So, like, it's not like it was all, outsourced. But, like, if you didn't have the show in the middle of it, then, oh my god, Grant.
What?
Magical Destroyers is the Control-Alt-Delete of anime.
What do you mean by that?
Have you ever seen people take Control-Alt-Delete comics, and then they delete the middle two panels and the joke works better?
Oh, yeah.
There you go. If Magical Destroyers, I feel like, is a more thought-provoking piece of media without the show in between, right? If you remove that, where it's telling you things, then, and instead you just have to, like, marinate in what the audio-visual experience of the opening and the ending are, then I think that's more generative, right? Like, you'll come up with something that's meaningful to you, perhaps as a self-proclaimed otaku, and you just own that now, right? Like, congratulations, you have now gone through the experience of otaku, right?
Hey, do you remember that one time at the end, there's the end card of the girl and we didn't know who it was?
Oh shit, you're right, yeah.
I figured out who it was.
Who was it?
I'm gonna send it to you. It's the what looks like to be the protag for the game that's going to come out in this that is going to be based off of Magical Destroyers.
What?
Yeah, I'm gonna actually send you the concept art because it kind of slaps.
Oh fuck me.
Yeah, no, that's the thing about this show, though, right? Is that the show, you think, oh, okay, it's supposed to be a prequel to something that June wrote in high school. That is what I have figured out. I don't know how reliable that is because I don't speak Japanese, so it's kind of hard to find information. But there's supposed to be a game. But the game is not the same as it. And so, I don't know. Whatever. It's whatever.
It really, I feel like maybe this demonstrates sort of where people's expertise here lie, right? Like, what we're seeing strengthen is, like, these high concept elements, stuff that's, like, the starting point, right? Or what breaks off from it. That, like, we have the premise of an anarchist group of magical girls, the conceptual grounds for, girls showing their bad sides. It's the stuff that I think we were, like, clinging to and hoping would turn around by the end, right? That those things would get valued. But in the writing of the anime, it just doesn't come to fruition. Maybe that's demonstrative of, the abilities of the folks working on this. That, like, maybe just TV anime was not the right format for this.
Yeah, I honestly think you could probably have told a pretty interesting story in a couple of episodes.
Yeah. I think that, when you sort of summarize all of this, when you have the immediate concern of, oh god, is this just a reactionary show about, nerds feeling oppressed just because, sometimes they'll have to go to bat for their favorite media in a discourse. Is this, like, we didn't even talk about production values and stuff, and frankly, whatever, right? This is supposed to be kind of a wild and loose show. Like, I am not gonna nitpick, oh, this shot looked bad, oh, this, there weren't enough frames here, or the audio mixing was bad there. Like, to the energy of this show, fuck it. Not gonna criticize that. But I think that whether or not it wants to have a message, it does. It's not tasteful in Grant and I's opinion. Even if we step out to the meta level, the best we get out of this is that otaku infighting happens, and that's not a good thing. And the show doesn't really pose any kind of material response to that. Just that, hey, intergenerational connections are a good thing. If we spend less time, slamming each other's interests and see the value in solidarity of being working class people who like things, then maybe the world can be a better place. And that's, the extent of it. Especially when the meta turn at the end is just that, oh, all of this was fabricated for one person's amusement, which, if you've had that happen to you, I'm sorry. It's unfortunate that you might relate to this in that way, but it's such a small problem to emulate in a story about war and media control and stuff like that. It's just unreal a little bit.
There's something there. There's something in the DNA of this show that is good. But it's pretty bad. And it's not even a fun bad either. There's some shows that are fucking garbage, but at least they're fun to watch. I kind of look at Symphogear, right? Mm-hmm. Where you have a show that has some pretty trash takes and there's some pretty trashy shit about it, but it's fun, right? It cares. I feel like Magical Destroyers doesn't care, and I think that's what makes it a dull show.
Yeah.
It doesn't give a shit. It doesn't give a shit about you. It doesn't give a shit about me. It doesn't give it a shit. It just wants to get ready to make its gacha game and make $5. Are you gonna spend $6 until you can roll a 5-star Anarchy Chan? Maybe once the game comes out, we'll get a better understanding of what the show is.
I doubt it.
The entire show is actually a biting criticism of gacha games, apparently, and that's why there's all the dead girls on the beach at the end, because those are the 1 stars you don't want.
See, again, it comes back to the ending being more compelling and thought-provoking than the actual show content. Oh god. Just for thoroughness, I do think it would be fun to to take this show apart and critically analyze what it has attempted to do, or what it is, and maybe dismantle why we think it doesn't fit that. There's going to be some stuff maybe that we just kind of recount here, but consider this sort of a lightning round approach to our thoughts on the show. So we've talked about this already, but just to sort of bury the nail on it, how is it as a TV anime?
Not good. There's a lot of good shows that are out there, and this season kind of kicks ass. Even for shows that I'm not a big fan of, but I know people like I know, you have G-Witch going on right now. If you want to watch something wild, if you want something that's like a biting criticism of culture, you have Oshinoko out right now, right? If you want to watch sweethearted stuff, you have Skip to Loafer. There's just so much good shit that you could watch instead of this that do it better.
Hey, you know what? Actually, that's a great idea. As we ask each of these questions, I'll also be pitching in like my own little recommendations. Like, oh, if you like this thing, but we don't think that Magical Destroyers did it well, then go check out this other thing.
Yeah. Like honestly, if you wanna deep dive into some of the awfulness of like Japanese entertainment and like idol stuff, I know Oshinoko is good. People really like that.
Yeah.
And then also if you want to watch cool big old fights, G-Witch, Gundam Witch from Mercury, fucking fantastic.
Yeah, and
if you
it's
want to
hyper
watch,
popular too, so you'll have people to talk to, right? I know, like right now, the fandom is kind of, for this show is squirming a little bit. So if you just need someplace popular to hang out with in a while, and that's real hot.
yeah, there's After School Insomnia Club. I don't think that has anything to do with Magical Destroyers, but apparently it's good. It's good. It's a show about good relationship. It's just good.
Yeah.
Now if you want to watch a magical girl show, I don't think there's Precure, I guess.
Well, we could even mention like, you know, Jun Inagawa mentioned like, yeah, I was inspired by Puella Magi Madoka Magica and Bludgeoning Angel Dokuro-chan. So hey, if you want to see where some of the inspirations were for this show, then and you haven't seen those, then go watch them. You have the recommendation from the show creator. Especially if
you season 2.
No, I don't.
I can't.
Do you honestly think the show will get a season 2?
Magical Destroyers?
Yes.
Absolutely not. Zero chance. Zero chance. If it does, we'll review it. But it's not even popular. Like it didn't get good ratings, and I don't think a lot of people watched it.
Yeah. Well, is that just like Western My Anime List ratings, or do you have other stats too?
I don't have any other stats.
Okay. But anyways, I've said enough on this as a TV anime. I agree with Grant. I think they really could have done like an OVA and just, or even a movie, and just squeeze this down just to what they need, produce it as that. They'd probably get to take those moments they really care about. You'll know them because they are well animated in the show. They have a lot of, like, you could see an increase in precision and quality in those moments. If we could cut down the amount of time in between those, then hey, I bet, things would be better overall. If you're looking for, something that does have that condensed size and, more intense pace, I recommend Green Legend Run, which is a 3-part OVA. It's about, a highly fantastical society that's in the middle of, an oppressive regime. I think that, the way it depicts that, it's not media focused. It's much more like real world, while still having the imaginative sort of like fantastical element to it. So hey, there's an alternative. Okay, next up, how is Magical Destroyers as anarchist media?
It's not. Yeah. It isn't. Like the idea of fighting against your government for doing injustice is not necessarily an anarchist ideal, but the idea that you are putting all of your hopes and thoughts onto one person as the otaku hero is also not anarchist. I guess you can say that by the end of it does get the anarchist message that it's not a person, it's an ideal, and as long as people are willing to work together to do it, you can achieve it. But it takes a long time to get there, and by the time it gets there, it hasn't really done anything.
Yeah. It doesn't help that what they're fighting for is essentially restoring, like legal recognition. That it's like, well, we're being criminalized and we don't want to be criminalized. So that's just returning to the status quo.
Right.
Like Wonku is a case where they made something out of nothing, right? And so that's them being sort of, both self-sufficient and, collective focused. They're like, hey, let's have an exchange with each other. Let's build something of our own. but that's open to everyone. That's a lot closer, I think, to that ideal. But when so much of the show is just about like, hey, we want to be, part of the world again, I think it's kind of telling that they were already, to some extent accepted. And, seriously, we see shots in the show of like, here's just a whole like retail store floor full of model cars that people might buy. Like practically all of the otaku in this show are consumer end. People who buy stuff and watch stuff, and like it's consumers. That means that they've already been catered to. It means that they have some amount of mainstream like value. It means that in a capitalist world, they are not likely to be ejected from that, right? It's not that we don't see stuff like this, like, for example, the criminalization of drugs and sex work, like that stuff where we see this underhanded sort of situation where, marginalized populations are criminalized for doing it. Meanwhile, the whole world seems to kind of work on those things existing anyways. And so there's like a double-handedness or a double-speak approach to it. But it doesn't feel like that was the intent here.
Right.
And again, I feel like those things hurt marginalized people the most, whereas, things like, class and race and, ability, affiliation, these things are really not part of the topics here. It's not a thing that the show wants to discuss as discourse or, in any kind of messaging. So, I agree with Grandin. I don't think that it's as anarchist as I think it is. Which, are we the ones to say yes or no on that? I don't know. I haven't read enough theory yet, but it doesn't feel it. It feels like a very juvenile understanding of what anarchy means, and a little bit self-destructive too. A little bit assimilationist. If you are looking for something that's more anarchist leaning,
Decadence.
There's Decadence for sure, and that has like the high scale, intense appeal of like it's monsters and war and capitalism. It's very heated and it's pretty fast paced. I might say extremely fast paced. Heck, we have a review on that show if you want to check that out.
Yeah, Decadence is good.
Shameless plug for a video that we don't monetize in any way, so
Yeah, or just go watch Decadence.
Yeah, just go do it. There's also Gatchaman Crowds and Gatchaman Crowds Insight. So if you need something a little more personal level, then go check that out. It's a show about people breaking sort of class and societal roles to make a more volunteer society, and they talk about democracy and what's the point of, say, sort of middle management types of administration, and stuff like that. I'm a big fan of it, so there's my plug. Okay, how is it as a political statement? I think we drilled this one pretty hard.
I mean,
just in
that's
case you have
the same
additional
thing.
thoughts.
It's not.
Yeah.
Right. It is more about the goofs and gaffs than it is about anything.
Yeah, particularly just in the sense that this show's concept of oppression is kind of imaginary in our current world. Like, there could be ways they could spin this, but they didn't spin it in that direction. So it feels very, like, unrelatable to someone like me. Granted, I'm a Westerner. I don't exactly know what it's like to be an otaku in Japan. But seeing as the otaku that they put front and center are the most, like, consumerist types, it really feels kind of misaligned. It's not like, oh, here's the people who make garage kits and are skirting around official sales. That could have been a great point, like, that's something that I could see being criminalized for, like, intellectual property laws or something like that. But nope, it's just, that's not on the table here. if you are looking for something that's much more political, and still like, about like being an otaku or, someone on the fringe of society, Welcome to the NHK is something you might want to
God,
check
I
out.
fucking knew you'd plug. I knew you'd plug that.
Look,
I'm just fucking kidding.
You're right. I have some opinions on how that show ends. I think it swings a little too conservative for my tastes. But it does show a lot of the substance that I don't think is here, right? Like, it does take its time to problematize, like, hey, here's someone who's so deeply entrenched in their own culture that it becomes self-destructive. It's the kind of thing that Shobon is supposed to represent, but only gets the last episode to do. Instead you get, episode upon episode upon episode of seeing that. There's also Danganronpa V3, which, like, if as much as we're saying, hey, this should have been shorter, Danganronpa's fucking long. But they still sort of take that meta commentary approach to, how people consume media and, like systems of oppression and stuff like that. Like, those things do get sort of at least somewhat measured into what that, game is. So if you want to, throw away like 40 to 60 hours, then there's that. It's at least a little bit of proof that you can overextend a political statement and, it still can make it out through the other end. You can substantiate it, right? And Danganronpa is also something that puts a bunch of weight behind its wacky characters and plot conceits, right? Like, it's not attempting to be realistic, just like the show. But I feel like the drama has a lot higher stakes. So if you felt underwhelmed by, like, the characterization and the interactions in the show, then I'll bet Danganronpa will be your kind of, like, taste, How is it as an account of otaku culture?
Yeah. I mean, I think if there are people out there that really do feel oppressed because of how much they like things, then I feel like they'll look at this as sort of a good show. I think that's kind of my problem with Magical Girl Destroyers as a whole, is that there are people out there who feel like that they do have that society puts them down because of what they like. And yeah, that's true. There are things that are unacceptable to like, but I find it a little tone deaf to compare it to, like, systemic oppressions of people. And so I think that there are going to be a group of otaku people who look at this and are like, oh yeah, man, don't you just hate it that you just can't love anime, without really missing the reason why they aren't accepted in society?
Yeah.
There are some things about otaku culture that is problematic, and I actually think one of the biggest problems in this show is that there are 3 magical girls who are part of the main cast, who don't get any character development, who don't exist outside the means of the main male character, and all the otaku are men except for like 2 or 3 girls who are part of a maid cafe. And so it's like, and I've seen comments on some of the episodes that are like, yeah, this is what anime should be about. We need to make sure that if you like anime, you need to watch this because this is what people think of you. And it's not true. But they might think that if you are being misogynistic or putting these ideals on pedestals that you shouldn't. And I think that in that way it's a good representation of otaku culture. But I also think, on the other hand, that there's going to be a lot of people who really like anime, who really like cars, or really like doing all this stuff, and they're going to look at this and think, why are they making everyone so cringe?
Yeah. I especially want to double down on your point of, like, there's no women here. How amazing is it that, like, it's sort of, like, fulfilled its own sentiment that, like, yeah, this is a boys club kind of culture that girls aren't into, and yet there are plenty of women who are incredibly important in the otaku scene that just aren't included here. Like, again, we see like, oh, here's some women in the drug scene, where that, Pink Chan rules over. Here's the idol girls, like, none of them have, memorable parts of the show aside from like the forced heterosexual shipping of two of the characters at the very end of the show, again, whose names I really can't recall. Right, like, this is what you have wrought. Right, like, it's not that you're living in a world where girls don't like what you like. You're not talking to girls. Like, go talk to a woman about her, her Bakuteku fan fiction or something. Just do it, right? Bite the bullet, even if it's not something you care about, and just learn a damn thing, right? Like, like, if there is one thing that it accounts for, it's you have to find it at like the sky view, looking down on this as if through a microscope, right? To be able to examine it and say, oh yeah, this is what we think otaku culture is. That's maybe the one like saving grace, I feel. Because otherwise you are missing out on an incredible range of people who have devoted skills and trades to making stuff, right? To being productive, to being interesting, and to, enjoying each other's craft. Like, yeah, it just feels like such a narrow view. If you are someone who has recently and honestly felt, yeah, the SJWs are censoring our waifus. They don't want us to have pretty girls anymore. They want all the women to be buff and muscular and strong feminine characters that take away from their feminine appeal. Why can't girls just be girls? Then I hope that you listened really closely to everything we just talked about, right? I want you to talk to some women and ask what they like in characters. I want you to flip things around and experience someone else's, little like life story in media. Maybe then you'll start to realize, oh wow, I'm actually part of a massive majority of people who like prioritize and valorize the values of masculine misogynists and fail to see that when that culture is pushed against, you're not being countercultural by trying to hang on to it. You're being countercultural. You're trying to reset things back to how they have been for so long, and you've been ignoring a big part of culture to do so. If you want a better account of otaku culture, then check out Otaku no Video. It might be a little difficult to track down, but what you'll get is something that both valorizes and heavily criticizes otaku culture. It's made by Gainax, so they've been through the trenches on this stuff, right? From like, garage kits and eroge up to mainstream success, right? And also some tax evasion in there, but that's for another day. Right, like, it's basically autobiographical without them outright admitting it in media, but it is sort of both parts, right? It's the total celebration of otaku and also a scathing, review of, what otaku are like. It's heavily extreme, but again, I think it's more insightful towards like the different, aspects of nerd culture in Japan. Hey, let's talk about the people who really care about VFX. Let's talk about the people who are really into hard sci-fi. How do they fit into this puzzle? You're gonna get more of that. And I can't believe I'm saying this, but Oreimo, as much as that show is a problem, and as much as I don't recommend it to anyone, they did make a show about otaku girls who are friends with otaku girls. So take that as you will, right? Like, we are people who are very willing to, admit what we could find valuable out of something. So I hope that you understand that all of this criticism is in good faith here.
Not me. Mine's. I hate. I'm a professional hater. Apparently, can give things leeway. Not me.
Okay. How is it as counterculture?
It's not. It's literally not. It is begging to be counterculture, right? It is sitting there on its knees, pleading that you think it's counterculture. Right? Oh, let's make sure the otakus are accepted. People already fucking do that. If you made this show in 2012, then you might have had a counterculture show, but you made it in 2023. Right? Like, Demon Slayer the movie was one of the best selling movies that came out during its time. People watch anime. Like, Western cartoons have blatant anime references in them because the people that are making them like anime, and there's manga clubs in schools now that are filled to the brim with a diverse group of people. Conventions have 30,000-40,000 people attending them. It's not counterculture. It exists. It's mainstream.
Yeah.
So when you're begging for this government to accept your likes that are already accepted, it's not that. But the thing is that, if you wanted to be counterculture, you would make a show about removing the mainstream of otaku from capitalist ideas and trying to create a more what's the word I'm looking for, interpersonal love for the medium, right? Because the problems with anime are not because people don't watch it or people don't like it. It's because it's so popular that they found a way to monetize it to a point where it takes a lot of the love out of it. Mm-hmm. Like this show is gonna have a gacha game.
Yeah.
Like, that's the least counterculture thing you can do.
Yeah. And the content of the show itself is really mild. Like, I say that relatively speaking, right? Like, again, maybe this was, maybe TV anime is what held it back, but like compare it to like Chainsaw Man running at the same time, right? Or was it a season
Chainsaw
earlier?
Man was a season earlier.
Okay, so season earlier, right? Chainsaw Man, blood and gore, like so excessive, right? Like you're seeing nasty intestines and, like it's very, very detailed in the violence that it presents. In this show, like, you get Kurosawa-style blood splatters, and, like, that's maybe, like, the grossest stuff you get. Like, nudity and sexual content are very mild, like, especially considering, like, that's one of the easier things you get to get away with in this sort of stuff. Like, there's so much, common day battle over anime fan service. And yet you really don't get hardly any of that in this show. Like, in a way, the most provocative thing in this show is when Anarchy, like, takes off her shirt for her transformation. And I feel like it's only that provocative because normally it would just, like, the shirt would explode off or, it would phase out or something. But, like, something about her manually taking it off and, like, it's like, that's something we're not used to, right? It's something that is uncharacteristic for the show and that it's a little real. But that's it, right? Like, it's not pushing the envelope. The drugs, maybe, like, as Grant mentioned before, like, that's maybe one thing that the show is doing that you really don't see all that often, but, also the drugs that they're showing are very magical in nature. It's just kind of pink elephant juice, which kind of feels a little cowardly. And then in the end, anyways, the drugs are vilified in the sense that they turn the magical girls on Otaku Hero as they become the magical destroyers as prophesied. So, like, if you want to take a message out of that, technically it's that drugs are bad. So, that's not very countercultural. Outside of that, maybe like the the brother sister love thing, but it's for one episode and mostly it's spent on a fight. And it's not like they describe their relationship hardly at all. Just that, oh, we love each other very much. Just take our word for it. So yeah, again, it feels like it's really underwhelming. Outside of that, the only other thing I could think of was maybe that in the swimsuit episode, I think it's episode 4, they put, a young boy in a girl's swimsuit, but then like they have the gag for like one scene and then he's okay with it. Maybe that's countercultural, that like, oh look, it's not a big deal. But again, it's there and gone. Then there's the bondage in episode 3. Yeah, and I didn't find that to be particularly off-putting. But then again, I don't know, maybe that's one of the few things in this world that I'm not that vanilla about. I don't know. Anyways, the show is not all that excessive, I would have expected it would want to be, but it's really not. It's very tame. If you are looking for anime that is much more excessive, go check out Lupin the Third, The Woman Called Fujiko Mine. And yeah, you heard me right. It's a Lupin show, but there's grotesque violence, there's detailed nudity, there's kinky sexual stuff, there's drug use and abuse, and all of this has compelling writing with it, and it's very stylish too. So like, if you're looking for, anime that makes you feel like an adult, yeah, I'm gonna watch something R-rated, then like, yeah, Lupin of all things, it's out there.
You can also watch The Thing's version of Lupin. That's pretty subversive.
You know what? Yeah, don't stop watching anime. Go watch some YouTube poops for your health.
For your health.
How is it as a character-driven story?
The characters don't even have fucking names.
Okay.
Like, there's nothing for this. There's nothing for this. We can just move on from this question.
All right. Well, if you want something that has characters that you'll remember the names of, then go watch Panty and Stocking and Garter Belt with Garter Belt.
Yeah,
what's the name?
That's getting a second season too.
Oh Jesus, it is. Yeah, I can't wholeheartedly recommend it because clearly some of the stuff does not hold up. But again, if you're looking for bad taste, if you're looking for something that's offensive, then that's gonna be a gold mine for you, right?
It's so good.
It's twice as edgy as this show, and the main characters are their anarchy is in their name. Perfect,
Yeah, it's great.
Oh gosh. Okay, now that we've exhausted all of that, what do we like about this show?
The transformation scenes are funny.
Yeah.
I kind of like that anarchy. It's just hold on, let me put on my magical girl dress. I think that's fun.
I agree with you.
The opening and the ending are probably going to get our best opening and ending rewards and our recap.
That's true.
No doubt about it. They're just phenomenal. It kind of served as a palate cleanser when we finished G-Wit.
It was kind of nice to just to go from oh my god, what is happening, taking it all in, to just okay, this is a much lighter exercise in analysis, for sure.
Yep, it's not great. I can't really the thing is it's not something that I would recommend. But if you watched it, I don't think I would be. I don't think I would think it's awful. I wouldn't think less of you for liking it.
Yeah,
it's just not. It's not fun, right? It's not. It's not bad enough to be fun.
Yeah, you should treat yourself by not watching this show. Worst case scenario, because it is kind of in this mainstream common sentiment about nerd oppression, then you're not really getting much new. So maybe it might have the unintended effect of radicalizing someone even harder in that direction, but Otherwise, like, I really don't think it's bringing anything new to the table, which hopefully isn't too harmful. I do appreciate, that as they sometimes attempt this scrappy, loose animation, it feels like they're really trying for something there. And I know that, Biebery Animation Studio is, in the grand scheme, relatively new, especially, like, taking this on as, like, this is their project. So, I hope this was a good learning experience in that sense. And I do think that it's a good stepping stone. I hope they got some memorable moments out of this they sort of get to keep in the portfolio. There are times where I can recognize they're trying to do thoughtful plot beats, and they're trying to seed things early on before they get brought up later. They introduce Slayer really early on, and they can repeat her throughout the show, even though I think that they really underplay her, even though she's supposed to be really important. There's a lot of too little too late in this show. They have Anarchy's nightmare sequences, where, she'll be waking up, from that, and, that's like a recurring part of the show that they're seeding there. They did set up the defector character who would later become, Otaku Hero number 2, so, they at least did that much. So again, I feel like it's like, they know what they need to do, it's just the execution is lacking. And it's not falling to our tastes as well. I do like the intergenerational messages. There's not that many of them, but, like, that's a positive thing, right? Like, that was one part of the show where I was like, hey, maybe this is gonna be all right. Maybe this is where things are gonna start, like, gearing up. I really wish there was more edutainment for, like, the elder geeks and stuff, but, that's that. The voice actors are clearly doing as best they can. We've heard quite a few of these actors, like, in other roles, and they're not, like, holding back at all. It's, if anything, the script and the situations are just not, enough for them to work with, but, they do put 100% effort in. And I think if there's anything that works out of these scenes, it's because of the voice delivery. And lastly, I really do, and I mean this, I really do like some of the music. Like, I know, like, again, I keep bringing it back to that Jun Inagawa interview, but he mentions, the rap scene and being into rap and stuff, and when they have some of these mumbling kind of lyrics that are, like, embedded in the music tracks, those are fun. I think that they give the show a more distinct style than just sort of the, break out the violins, it's a sad moment kind of stuff. It's one thing that sets it apart from other anime, so that is nice. And I am, like, really looking forward to getting access to the soundtrack in some way. So, okay.
Yeah.
I feel like we don't have to talk about themes. I think we talked enough about that, which means that unless you have any other... Do you have any other closing thoughts before we move into hypotheticals?
No.
All right. So I have 2 hypotheticals for you. Okay?
Yeah.
Let's say that Magical Destroyers gets its season 2. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
What do you want to see in it?
Not
what you think will work. What do you want to see in it?
I want to see a full-on musical episode. I want to see them take on all singing and dancing Buffy the Vampire style. But I don't know. I like maybe more episodes about Anarchy and Pink and Blue, like realizing that they were just pawns for not just the villains but also Otaku Hero. Yeah. Maybe see them start their own little uprising to be, hey, we're not the otakus gods and we're not gonna work for the government. I don't know. I can see that working.
Yeah, I agree. I think that they clearly are into the character designs of the Magical Destroyers. I would really like to see them do more with their interactions, right? And if Otaku Hero is not the only focal point anymore, right? If they've separated Otaku Hero and the Magical Destroyers, then I would like to see them actually, like, pass the pass the Bechdel test, you know. Or the, what's the full name? I think the Wallace Bechdel test. But yeah, when this show is really trying to make you, like, convince you that, hey, you should care about these characters, it should be important and heart-wrenching that they've turned sides, then I would like to see them succeed at that, and I think it takes more character interaction, you know? Okay, next up. Which TV anime do you think is most likely to kick in someone's sense of sometimes media doesn't work? Your options are Gibieto, X-Arm, or Magical Destroyers. Or if you have something else.
I don't think Magical Destroyers is that far below, that far down.
Like, let's say someone's new to this stuff, you know, like relatively new, and they just have this awakening realization of, oh no, sometimes stuff is bad. Sometimes it sucks hard.
I think that I honestly think that would probably come from watching something a little bit more mainstream. But
that's fair.
What was the first anime I watched that I ended up hating? Sword Art Online was that for me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I watched Sword Art Online and was like, wow, okay, sometimes anime that people like isn't fun.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like watching Magical Destroyers would make you feel worse, because at least Gibiete and X-Arm suck and they look bad. I feel like if you watched either of those, you knew what you'd be getting into right off the bat. But I feel like if you watch Magical Destroyers, you're watching it and you're like, oh, okay. So sometimes shows just end for no reason.
Yeah, that's true. I think Magical Destroyers has, like, it sure gives the impression that, like, well, maybe things will turn up. You know, like, maybe it's just a slow start. Or, yeah, I'm into it. Let's see where it goes. You know, like, I mean, we gave it. We could have stopped, but we didn't.
Absolutely not.
And that was even with it, you know, not being a fun bad watch, right? Like, we stuck with it because there was at least a little possibility that maybe it would have turned up in our favor. Whereas something like X-Arm is like, episode 1, first few minutes, you're going to see a 2D character and a 3D character on screen at the same time. Like,
and it fucking rules.
even to someone who, like, you know, maybe it's like their first time seeing this sort of thing, that has to be an instant, like, repulsion factor. Just like, what the hell is happening? You don't do that. People don't do that, right? Like, that's not...
Yeah,
what is
Magical
happening?
Destroyers leads you into a false sense of maybe. And I think that's worse.
Yeah. It doesn't... There's the celebrity factor, like, oh, it's the Final Fantasy concept artist got to make the character designs. It must be good, you know. But, you know, Magical Destroyers and X-Arm don't have that. But at the same time, yeah, I think it's different flavors of disappointment. Okay. Any other thoughts, feelings, concerns to close out this review, Grant?
It's a show. I appreciate that it's anime original. I would much rather have shows like this than the seasonal isekai of, oh no, I got trapped in a spirit world with my Ferrari, or whatever the new hotness is. So I'd rather have shows that are like this, that try something and fail, than fucking anything like that.
Oh no, I got trapped in the light novel adaptation of Magical Destroyers.
I would watch the shit out of that. But yeah,
Grant, what if you became Otaku Hero? Like that one Dragon Ball story they made where someone wakes up as Yamcha.
Wait, is that real?
I'm pretty sure, yeah. Wait, we're gonna look this up. We're doing this. All right, we're doing this. Dragon Ball Isekai Yamcha.
Why would you want to be Yamcha?
I don't think they had a choice. That's kind of the point of isekai, right?
I guess, but you could just fucking.
Okay, the subtitle is, or like the tagline is, one fan's dream of being reincarnated into the Dragon Ball world turns into a nightmare. So
okay, that's see, that's funny. That guy knows that person knows how to write isekai.
Yeah, that's literally the same premise as, I go into a world map level 1 or anything like that. Don't debase yourself, Grant. We're better than this. We just told everybody we're better than this. Oh, there's egg on our face. Oh, shit. Wipe it off. Okay.
Let's finish.
Grant, if people want to find more things from us, where can they look?
Oh shit! If you liked listening to us talk about the show, you can follow us on YouTube where we post things like this episode. And you can follow me on Twitter where I post things like this episode. Or you can follow us on our much more active thing, which is Twitch, where we play video games every single week. And we do voices and talk about game development and interact with chat and do a lot of fun stuff. So hit us up on Twitch. Say hi. What's our next episode?
That's going to depend on my ability to edit videos.
I know what our next episode is. It's really not hard. It's your Gundam Witch from Mercury full review.
It's true. That's on the way. So...
yeah. So be on the lookout for that. Follow us on YouTube. Follow us on Twitch. Follow us on Twitter. Or don't do any of those things. Because we are not your dads.